Hey, what is up guys, the Strong Boys 19 here. So this is the next episode for Classic Albums Revisited. And yes, I know, it is my first review of the year since 3 months. The last album review that I had done in general was Goat's Head Soup by the Rolling Stones. But I need to come back to this segment on the channel because I want to make this review special. And I want to dedicate this review to Jacques Bazet and Holger Zhukai from Cannes. And speaking of Cannes, I'm going to be doing the album review on Cannes' 1971 double album magnum opus entitled Tago Mago. Tago Mago is their third studio album, and for those who want to know the band, Cannes were a German experimental rock, krautrock band, and they have been making music like no other band in Germany that I've ever heard of before. Besides that, there were other German bands who are really important ones in the krautrock scene, like Faust, Neu, Amundul 2, to Embryo, Ashra Temple, etc. But Cannes for me had always been a big influence on me when I wanted to know about the history and experimental music as a whole. And this album right here is my #1 favorite krautrock album and my favorite Cannes album. I do love Future Days as much, but Tago Mago was the album that got me interested to know about a very important and creative style of music. And this album is 73.5 minutes long, 7 tracks, and there's so much words that anybody could say about this album, because this is a really important release, not only for the band, but for its historical period of time from the band's career and krautrock in general. Because when I first heard of Tago Mago, I had no idea what to expect. I really got to love it almost immediately, because it was a record that was so game-changing, and it's quite an alienation, like some of the other experimental releases like Captain Beefheart's Trout Mask Replica, to some of Frank Zappa's music. But I never heard a German band like Cannes before, and Tago Mago opened my eyes to know about music to be more adventurous, and this band is a perfect example of that. The first half of the album is really more on the straight up rock experimental type of vibe. The opening track, Paper House, which is one of my most favourite Cannes tracks, starts slow, but as the track progressed, it transforms into a quicker pace type of direction that flows perfectly. Then we get to another track, which is Mushroom, which does have quite of an industrial sound to it, and then to another really smooth, mellow track called Oh Yeah, mistakenly said in the video, Hallelujah. They have been adding so many effects to this album, and the vocals on Oh Yeah have been played in reverse the entire time. And Cannes is definitely a perfect band that they decide to go through some new approaches to their sound, including some improvisation to tape editing, like I just said about the reverse bit, and some feedback and avant-garde. And speaking of avant-garde, the second half of the album, from the compositions of Om to Pecking O, random, dark, eerie, and experienced vibe of compositions with lots of noises of percussion to guitar sounds, even dogs barking, and the vocals to be over the top, like loud in places. The musicianship on this album is really strong. from start to finish. The band knew what they were doing about the pacing, and the production is absolutely outstanding. The vocals from Damo Suzuki, he pulled these vocals off really, really well. And this was the band's first studio album with Damo Suzuki on vocals as well. And the drumming from Jacques Lebezy was just so fantastic. He made so many groovy type of beats, and he could just play them all day, like the track Hallelujah, which is a really repetitive, groovy drum beat, but over time, when the track continues, the band keeps adding more sounds of lead guitar work to improv vocal performances, and Holger Zhukai's bass guitar work sounds really fat. This is definitely one of the most influential albums of all time. This was a record that sounds really modern, well, like Future Days. It sounds like an album that was made today, but with an album like Tago Mago, and maybe others like Tago Mago's follow-up, Egibam Yasi, for example, there's no other band that could make music like this. And I'm sure that there are other bands that would make something like inspired but not copied like Can's material. But Can had pulled off, in my opinion, one of the most interesting and fascinating pieces of music ever recorded. So the tracks are just outstanding. They don't sound the same. They sound different from each other, and the weirdness and challenging avant-garde pieces, and it's a really big ride of an album, and you'll see why when you listen to this album. So that's really all I got to say about Can's 1971 masterpiece Tago Mago. I strongly recommend it. I would recommend listening to some of their live tracks, because Can is another one of those bands that can just jam as long as they want to. You'll see what I mean. So that is all I got to say, and I cannot recommend this album enough. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll keep you guys posted for more videos in the near future.